Hey everyone, welcome to the Smiling Homeschooler Podcast. It's glad to be back with a live episode. Before we begin, we want to say thank you to Teaching Textbooks for making the Smiling Homeschooler possible and just all the support they give us and the homeschooling community. You should go check them out, support them at teachingtextbooks.com. So when you come time to the next school year, don't forget them. Also, thank you to Samaritan Ministries and Redeem Health Share, where members are committed to honoring Christ and serving one another through healthcare needs. As Dad likes to say, we use, love, and recommend Samaritan Ministries, and you can learn more in the show notes about Redeem Health Share by Samaritan Ministries, and we appreciate their support as well. But Dad, if you're ready, go ahead and get started. Let's go.
I don't know if it's just age or maybe my tiredness, but Ben just sounds just a little too perky for me. I mean, I'm like listening to him, and it's like watching so I've got sore knees. It's like watching a young person go up a set of stairs, and you're like, wow, look how well they do that. But Ben just sounds so perky right now. But I'm a little tired because not only did we get over the 4th of July, the Memorial Day weekend. It was a long weekend. It was a good weekend, but we got home from the giant FPEA Florida Homeschool State Convention, one of the greatest conventions in the country. And so maybe I just have a little bit of hangover from there. I drove all night. So we did it a little different. We've never done it this way before, but I drove all the way down there with the trailer by myself, picked up my wife, my son, and my daughter and her family at the airport, took them to the hotel, and then on Sunday morning, starting at 3 o'clock in the morning, I drove them back to the airport and then drove so they could fly home and get home by lunch. And then I drove the 18 hours home by myself. But it is kind of, if you're going to drive as a family, it's probably the best way to go by yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Because no one tells you how to drive. No one tells you, why did you take that exit? No one. It's just, you can just stop. When you want a bag of pork rinds, you just stop and get them.
That's what I was saying to someone. I was like, I don't know why Jed didn't drive back with him. And then one of my siblings was like, I don't think Dad wanted anyone to go with him. I think he just wanted to drive on his own.
Maybe. But even though so on the way down, I drove slower. So when the speed limit was 70, I drove about 64 because I was trying to get really good gas mileage. I was hoping to break the 20 miles per gallon. I didn't. I got just about 19.9 miles per gallon. But as I had a reality check when I got home. I typed in, what's the comparison between driving the speed limit all the way down to Florida or driving 7 miles under the speed limit all the way there? And it does say you save about 15 to 20% or 10 to 15% in fuel, but that averages out to about $25.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
and you save like
I didn't
3 hours or 2 hours.
Yeah,
or
and
it
costs 2.5. It takes 2.5 hours longer. So maybe that's not worth it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I don't feel super perky because this morning, I feel like this is kind of the ultimate 4-H fair thing, is that our fair there, you can camp and there's like camping spots. There's not a lot of them. There's only like 35 slots, and they auctioned off 3 of them ahead of time. So if you didn't want to have to wait in line, you could just pay extra and get them, which I didn't know anyway. So I got there this morning, met with 2 friends, one of my good friends and his father-in-law, actually Sam's father-in-law, my brother. Anyways, and so we were going to get there at 4 in the morning to get our camping spots. And I got there at 4 and I was like 7th or 8th in line, I think, at that point.
Wow.
And my friend Jerry is his name. He got there at 1:30 in the morning because he couldn't sleep, and he sat there. He was number 1, obviously. Thank goodness it was not a terrible evening. It was only like 50s or something like that. So we sat there for 3.5 hours until 7:30. Thankfully they opened early, and there was only 15 spots in the area that we wanted to be. I was number 15, so I got what we needed. And so that was an exhausting morning. So today has felt like the longest day ever.
Well, but you failed to tell them that, but you are buying for some prime real estate that is usually 3 inches underwater.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to be in the mud hole, probably.
Invested mud hole.
Yeah. That's
So
what we were
that's a good
joking
lead
about.
into today's show, Ben, because
true.
you were kind of thinking about
Yeah,
stupid things we do for our kids.
Well, I'm going to give the kind of the premise of why I was thinking about this was because at Sunday this week they did kind of like graduation, recognize our seniors, and it's always fun to see I don't really know them because I'm not in that age group, but they're but the part that always strikes me as kind of a little bit sad is like you see their whole life go from basically an infant of 1 up till they're 18, and you just see it in like 30 seconds, and you just see them like growing up, and it's always sentimental and all that kind of stuff. And Renly's now 9, so she's basically halfway there, and I just can picture her in that moment very easily of like, yeah, that's going to be so sad, but and also happy in a good way. So, but then I was thinking that, I only get one chance to live each of these days. We all of us do. We only get one shot at it. And I said, I personally would never get a tattoo, but if I had to, I said, I'd get one on my wrist that just said, don't waste it. Cause I only get, one time to do that day. So, I've just been really thinking about it a lot this last like handful of days of just, I don't want to waste it. Now, that being said, when I'm there and my kid is really frustrating, I want to do everything except don't waste it. I would like to waste it very much so, and that's the hard part. But so it's making me think about that and just like the actual memories that stick around with our kids, because you're always like, man, we gotta do X big thing, or we don't want to let this moment slip by. But then it's just like, there's a lot of life going on. There's the busyness of everything, so it's kind of like what's actually going to leave an impact on my kids that they're going to remember, which obviously lots and lots of little things do. But so that was kind of what I was thinking about of this topic and why I thought it would just be, we've talked about it, before, but I think it'd be a good thing to kind of circle back to because everyone.
So what
needs
do you think,
encouragement.
Ben? I mean, what do you think makes those moments? What causes us to remember some things and not others?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I think there might be 2 categories. I mean, there's probably more. I'm not, I haven't broken this down scientifically or anything, but I think there's the ones that don't stand out as a particular like, oh, that one time we did this thing, and just create this like warm glow of, oh, I loved playing with dad, or something like that. Or I loved reading books with my mom, those kind of deals. I think those are not as necessarily one moment, but I think the other ones, the ones that stand out to me the most are the things that felt special or unique or just different, something that even if it's not a big deal, but just something that wasn't the normal daily deal. And I think those really are what stand out in my mind, just as a broad category. But if you want, we can start getting specific. But
yeah, I mean, I think that's what we'll lead into, because I do think, I think it's always interesting what people collect as memories. I remember Ike, one time we went somewhere and he had a bottle that was just a Sprite bottle. And he was trained by the best in collecting junk to remind you of special moments. But he had just collected a Sprite bottle because it was a fun time that we had somewhere, and he was little. And I asked him, why, what's the Sprite bottle from? And he was like, oh, that was when we were in, I don't know. It was something. It wasn't even that big a deal. It was like we were in Shipshawana at the flea market, and it was hot, and he'd gotten Sprite. But I think that's so interesting. And then maybe later on, maybe after the commercial break, we could talk about the danger maybe of missing some of these and what would cause us to miss those. But so how about we just dive in and talk about some of those memories that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, some of the ones that like stood out to me that I think they remember. And I asked Hudson, and he was just like, I mean, he said vacation, that was a big one for them. Obviously, like they love going on the yearly, a yearly trip together. And that's
usually
that's
they
awesome.
Say Christmas morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Opening presents.
But then he just said being bored, and I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Hudson. But I think something like, learning to ride a bike, I think is something that's just special. Maybe I remember it more than they do. I don't know. But I mean, I do remember that as a little kid, like kind of being a big deal, and it's something that just feels special. And when you look back to it, it's kind of like one of those big moments. And I think a lot of them can be around that kind of those big, you kind of leveled up as a kid, moments of where you got like Anders. I just gave him a first like little, pocket pliers, pocket knife kind of deal. And that was huge to him. I mean, he's so excited. And that's something I think he will remember, because I remember when I got, my first knife, or one of my first knives, so I think those kind of little things can be really, really meaningful.
Well, I think one time I asked my email list, asked them what their favorite memory growing up was, because I thought, oh, those are the kind of things I want to repeat. And I bet you 80%, and that's without exaggeration, 80% of those who wrote in said it was camping. And I just thought that is so interesting. And we're not, even though we traveled around in an RV for years, we weren't really campers, unless you count it as camping in Walmart parking lots. But there is something, and that's what I was thinking about, your staying all night at the fair for a week at the fair at the campground. There's something memorable about that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, I don't love it, but I mean, we usually spend the night out in a tent once a year. And then we also, we do go camping like in our camper with friends and stuff at a actual campground and stuff like that outside of vacation. And I mean, the kids, those are the highlights for sure for the kids. But I do think like all of those kind of things, I just picture it as like, you just have like vines or roots just like growing, it's I feel like it really just builds so much connection. And right now, I mentioned, I think in our marriage group, we're going through, it's called like, I don't remember, like habits, Mission for the Family or something like that. I think it's a Stephen Covey book or something like that. But anyways, and then it talks about how, make sure you're doing this amount of time with the kids, and make sure that, you've scheduled out when you're going to be able to, be there for their different events and stuff like that. But I was just thinking, man, we have such a huge benefit being homeschooled that the expectation is we get to just spend time together, like consistently, often. Because I think when you are doing all the sporting events, you have school every day, you're both working, all that, like it does really get rare. That's where it's not just a cliche, like it's a cliche for a reason, that so many people in movies and stories and things like that, like vacation, it all rides on the vacation once a year. And I think in homeschooling, we are so blessed to not have to have that one vacation or that 2 times a year where you actually have a week together, be the only thing that, you remember as a time together as a family.
And then the dad ruins it.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think playing games is a big one. I think that can be something, if you're a game family, I know that, is big for our kids. Love that. And I think they will remember a lot of those. I think a lot of times too, one-on-one interactions, like with a parent, can be really, really memorable. I mean, I know Mom for a while there would like cycle through and take one kid each week to go grocery shopping in the evening. And that was like really, really special. Or, if Dad would take one of us to a speaking engagement or whatever else, I think those can be really, really memories that will stick with you your whole life. I don't know if you ever...
Well, I think too, like with summer coming up, I think there are a lot of those things that are just really special times, like whether that's stopping the ice cream truck when you hear the sound. I mean, I heard a guy emailed me, a dad emailed me just maybe within the last couple of weeks, and he said, Todd, we heard the ice cream truck, and we missed it. But the next time he came around, we got him when we got the Smurf Pops and I just really, I admire dads like that, because it costs a fortune and it's junk. They're treats.
I will say, Dad, it's not as much of a fortune as you always used to make it seem like it was.
It cost a fortune.
Like, sorry, children, this costs the next 3 months of rent, or mortgage. It's like
and
$6.
They don't even eat it, but they remember there's something magical about it, or catching lightning bugs in the summer. Or we have a lady who, like a traveling donut salesman, and the donuts cost a fortune, and I mean a fortune, like over $20 for a dozen donuts. That is a lot. Small fortune, but they're so good. But it takes effort, Or the first day of summer, we've celebrated almost Ben's whole life, kids fun day or kids days, where we just go to a movie or stay up late and watch a video or have a campfire or get a slip and slide or do something as a
Yeah,
family. And those are so powerful.
yeah, for sure. I think there's also, and again, these are not as like fun ones, but these are things that I do think like will make an impact. And that, I remember specifically, like I remember anytime we did something like where we went and helped someone, I feel like that was something that really stood out, whether that was like you used to, as a pastor, we'd go to the old, the senior home and, do stuff there, or we'd go help someone, maybe move or something like that. And, I'm not saying you have to do all that stuff, but I do think that is part of, showing your kids like that being part of the body of Christ is important, and, the helping others. So it's not something we did all the time. We sometimes, there's seasons where that happens more frequently, but it definitely stuck with me. And I think it's just from an example standpoint. I also remember like projects a lot. Like if we had to, whether it was a car thing or a house thing or whatever else. I mean, as much as a kid, I hated it. I do remember it, and those things do stick with you. I think, and especially if you can get it so your kids are like wanting to be part of something like that, that's pretty cool. But that's pretty hit or miss, I found.
I think it's fun when you're working to get something done for a reason. I mean, when I was a kid, my dad owned a print shop my adult life too. And I hated working in it. I did. But I remember so many times we were getting ready to go on vacation, and my dad was like the sole employee besides his kids. And we would all work real hard. We had to get, a job done. And we would work late at night, and I'd watch those sheets of paper come off the printing press. And then to know that we were done and we could go on vacation. Or, I know Ben has a pool where, you work real hard to get it ready so that you can enjoy it together. I just think that's fun. I think sometimes like soldiers who always say, the friendships that are formed in the foxholes. I think family is sometimes formed in those foxholes too. Maybe you live south where you've had hurricanes or you've had storms and you've huddled together in a basement, or limbs are down and you got to cut them up and stack them up and put them out by the side of the road, or just raking leaves, or getting your house ready for winter, or getting things ready for summer, or even today, the grass. So we've been gone for just about a week, and the grass was thick. And I told Jed, who's 18, I said, "Hey, I need you to cut the grass today." And he was like, "Ah, like, can I do it
I only
tomorrow?"
now have 4 hours for the day to dedicate to golf, and my life is terrible.
You heard it. You got his transcript.
Yeah.
And then, I told Mom afterwards, I said, I just want my kids all to know that they have to contribute to keep this house running. Not because they're my slaves, but because we all need each other. And I just love that. I love that when we've done homeschool conventions. I love it when one of my kids says afterwards, "We did pretty good, Dad," or "We didn't do very good." But the part I like is the we part, that he didn't see it as my thing or, somebody else's thing. It was our thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're creating. And, because I think if it's just to make memories, that's not a good enough reason for me. Because, the truth is we're going to be in heaven. We're going to spend eternity together. Do we really, who cares if we make memories? And, but if it's bigger than that, which I think it is, I think it's to create something that leads our kids home, that leads them to God. Because I think they don't just love the things that we love and doing the things we do, but I think they love God because we love God and we're doing it with them, and I just think it's the glue that sticks us together. And I just think it's so, so important. But how about a commercial break?
Yeah. Well, real quick, we just want to say thank you to Teaching Textbooks. And Teaching Textbooks is the math curriculum my daughter used this whole season, or this last school year. I grew up, I used it. All my siblings pretty much have used it. And it's just amazing. We really do recommend it wholeheartedly because we have seen the fruit of it. So if you haven't checked it out, you should. They have free trials. You can also view they have like family plans, so you can just subscribe right through the website, and it works pretty much on any device. So you should go check them out, teachingtextbooks.com, for the next school year.
Hey, we also want to thank Redeem Health Share of Samaritan Ministries for making today's show possible. Part of being a parent is making sure everyone is taken care of when medical emergencies happen. And everyone knows that summer can tend to bring those things up. But don't sweat it, because being members of Redeem gives you the peace of mind when it comes to the unexpected medical burdens. So you can enjoy the summer with your family. So check them out today at redeemhealthshare.org or in the show notes, the link below.
Well, real quick,
hey Ben,
I was going to read two comments. I just thought they were both good.
Okay.
Ariel said, my kids remember the most random things that I can't remember, but also the things that we do annually or seasonally: campfires and day trips in the summer, pumpkin patches in the fall, looking at Christmas lights and hot cocoa at Christmas time, etc. It doesn't have to be pricey or hard. One thing they like to do every winter is tropical beach party. We turn up the heat, put down beach towels, turn on Hawaiian music, make smoothies, and watch Gilligan's Island. It was a random idea. I had one dreary winter day, and it stuck.
Great.
That's perfect. I mean, I think that is just awesome. And then Amy said, my mother-in-law actually, kids doing school in the maple tree, sound of Carolyn singing while baking everything 4-H, or baking everything 4-H, all the pets and everything. All the kids learn through loving them, toy time and hearing kids talk about Jesus, the kids doing the handstand on the kitchen counters, the laughter in our house, playing in the river and the pond, drama of feeding crickets to the lizard, kids playing in the barn, and now watching and hearing their grandbabies repeat it all. But I do think both of those get to the heart of just, and this is something I have to remind myself of, to be honest, is sometimes it's like you think, oh, if we could just do that Europe trip with our kids, or if we could just all go to Hawaii, or if we can take a 2-week-long trip and hit every stop along Route 66, or go to all the big museums, or whatever it may be, you can fill in the blanks. And if you don't get to do those things, sometimes it can be like, oh, I just feel like I'm just wasting all this time. But I do genuinely believe if you can never leave your town, you can still have kids that are incredibly blessed and had an incredible childhood, incredible family, and are not going to be stunted in any way, just through, I think, just all the things you can do together as a family, even in a local, cheap way.
But I do think it's interesting, and I'm going to read. Catherine wasn't able to join us because she's feeling very pregnant, but she had a comment. But I do think whether it's a tropical vacation or whether it's snow cones from the ice cream truck, or whether it's doing handstands on the kitchen counter or doing those other things, there is a price to those things, and sometimes the price is not in money, but maybe it's a price of it's going to be a big mess, or it's going to be inconvenient, or it's going to take time, or I got to plan for this, Gilligan's Island, heat up the, summer thing, because it's easier just not to. And Catherine said, and I thought it was good, I've been thinking about how oftentimes the best memories don't come easily. It takes courage and inconvenience for parents, and usually money, to go on a vacation or rent a cottage or a boat or take the day trip to the dunes or whatever, especially with little kids. I think a lot of people rationalize their way out of things that create the most amazing memories, and I think that's true. Sometimes I think we were so creative when our kids were little, and my wife will say, "You used to do this." I'm like, I wasn't tired then. I'm tired now, and it sounds so hard. Or it does cost money. I mean, like I say that about the ice cream truck, and you're right. It doesn't cost a fortune. And in fact, it doesn't cost a fortune. But when you're a cheap dad, sometimes it feels like you create this narrative in your head that it does cost a fortune. Yeah. And it feels real. I mean, it just feels real. And I have a good wife who had a good father who bought those things. I had a good father who didn't buy those things. When I went to Dairy Queen as a kid, I had a 21-cent limit. which was a small vanilla cone. You know, statutes of limitations say you cannot arrest my father now. But, and anything above that, I had to buy myself. And so that seemed reasonable to me. I was the one who I didn't know Cracker Barrel had food inside of it. I thought it was a place you stopped to go to the bathroom, and generosity is when those memories are made. Again, not in always monetarily, but just in taking the time to do it. And sometimes, Ben, I mean, really, even as homeschoolers, we can sometimes let homeschooling get in the way of that, because we have school to do today. We can't stop right now to go do this thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that is 100% legit. I mean, the amount of times I've heard people say the reason they don't go do something that would be incredibly fun as a family is just because, oh, well, the kids won't remember it anyway, or, oh, well, when they're older, we'll do it, and I mean, again, my kids aren't even that old, but like the when they're older thing, you can only say that so many times, and then they are older, and then you miss the opportunity. So I really have felt myself convicted of like, I watch the dollars and I don't want to spend the money on, whatever, but I mean, you just don't get a lot of them. I mean, every summer, and the reason we're talking about this now is, school's wrapping up. I mean, around here, at least schools are, getting out here this next week. Obviously homeschooling, you could have stopped a month ago. You could stop in a couple weeks, whatever it may be for you. But, this is the time I'm kind of thinking about how do we spend our summer? And I just, you've done this, I know, Dad, ad nauseum, but you don't get that many summers per kid, so if you have a 10-year-old, I mean, each one of those summers is a 10%, kind of deal of what you got left with them at home, so I'm going to encourage myself and you is just try not to put things off if you think it would be a fun thing as a family, even if the youngest kid doesn't remember it perfectly, because especially if you have these big spreads, which a lot of homeschoolers do, you're never going to have every kid be in the perfect age where it all just works, out perfectly. So I don't know.
Well, and I'll kind of close it down with this. I remember, and maybe I've shared the story before, but it's a story worth sharing again. I can remember getting an email from a mom who said that she and her kids were going to travel the country or go on like a couple week RV tour. They just got an RV. They were going to go do it. And she said, we're going to do it without my husband because he just died. And they said, we've been talking about this for years. And she said, but now we're going to do it. And now I didn't hear the whole story, but I would guess some of the reason they didn't do it before is because it cost a fortune, because gas was expensive, because the Grand Canyon was so far away, or because the kids were too young. And for whatever reason, they talked themselves out of it, and the husband missed out on it. Now he gets to spend eternity with his kids, later on. And that's okay. And that's way over that. But I just don't want to be that dad or mom who listens to all the reasons why you shouldn't do those things you've been doing or thinking about. So if you've been thinking about them, I would encourage you, as Ben encouraged you, to just do them. I can remember being at and I do know I shared this before. I can remember being at a family's house in South Dakota, and taped to their door was a poster board, 24 by 36 inches. And on it were 100 items that they were going to do that summer. And they were, 100 sounds like a lot, which it is. But they were pretty simple things. They were like, draw chalk art on the driveway, go to a garage sale, sing a song out loud in the rain, and most of them didn't cost anything. And they had scribbled off probably 40 of them, X amount. But I thought, that is intentional. That's an intentional mom. And what a great thing. You want to make memories? That's how you make memories. If memories don't come easy for you, you might have to be a little more intentional and write them down. But now's the time to start thinking about them now.
Cool. All right. Well, enjoy. Hopefully you're going to, wrap it up here school wise. If you haven't already, we'll be here every week, obviously, but we're going to be having more of a focus on just family, parenting, have some fun guests, and just try not to, bring the focus back to the school too much, even though I know a lot of people don't take very long breaks nowadays. But so let's hope everyone is going to be able to enjoy their summers. And we'll see you next week.